Okay, Steve, thank you so much for joining me here today. Welcome to this video interview, and we're here with Steve Multer, everybody. This is somebody who I've worked with quite a bit in different aspects in terms of preparing for conferences and presentations, and he's been such a valuable guide in that regard that I thought he would be somebody that you all could learn from as well. So, Steve, welcome to the show.
Such a kind introduction. Thank you, Dana. I appreciate it. Great to be here with you. Congratulations on the new podcast and welcome to all of your listeners. Let's create some value for them today, shall we?
Let's dive in. I Before we do that though, I just thought maybe a quick intro into who you are and maybe some of your background might be beneficial. So if we could start there.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. So, my name is Steve Multer. My company, very easy, Steve Multer Corporate Storytelling. I've been around since 1998. The company was developed initially to serve the market messaging needs for Fortune brands. That's what we set things up as, what is it, 26 years ago, 27 years ago, whatever it is that we're going on. But initially, I started out as a professional corporate spokesman. My first client was Tivoli Systems right after they'd been purchased by IBM. I came into this industry right at the height of the dot-com boom when these companies were just getting snatched up left and right. They couldn't spend enough money and they were out there pitching their story left and right, and everything was beautiful and flowers were blossoming and gold was falling from the skies. And then a little thing called 9/11 happens and the dot-com boom comes to an end. And I sort of found myself at this transition point. I had a background in theater, so I had been used to being on stages for all of my life in front of people. I made this natural transition into what at the time in the 1990s we called corporate theater. Same thing, being on a stage, occupying a role, whether that's as a product marketer, like the people who are listening in with you, or an executive, or a designer, or a developer, whatever it happened to be, and playing that role. Here's what we built. Here's why it matters. Here's why you care, and allow me to tell you a story about that particular product or service or solution. And after things slowed down following the dot-com boom, there was a natural attrition rate that went from not only just speaking on behalf of corporations, but helping those companies to kind of dig deep and really extract the real story they wanted to tell, and not just to their customers, but also to partners, to media analysts. And as I began to grow the business, starting in the 2000s, it started to add things like speaker coaching, which you and I have done together, and executive team trainings, and then working as an on-camera host, which really hit its apex during the virtual time of COVID and during the pandemic. But what could I do to become a winning communications expert, a presence trainer, and somebody who was a thought leader in terms of creating phenomenal corporate content? And that's what brings us together in our work together with Splunk, and then also right now, why we're talking to one another.
Absolutely. And and just to go back to some of the tips and tricks and things that you've taught me and many other people I've worked with and preparing for, engaging with an audience and getting in front of on a stage, really, like you said, this is a lot of what we do is you have to get on a stage or you're working to prepare someone else to go in front of an audience. And a lot of what we do is just making sure we're prepared and that we have an actual story. Like,
Mhm.
your tagline there is really kind of accurate for what product marketers are doing is we're putting together this story for our audience. And so, and even before we started this recording and podcast episode, one of the things you mentioned is, hey, we want to make this as valuable for the audience as possible. So right there, you're already applying it. And so I just wanted to start there, right? So for product marketers that are, especially in cybersecurity, we have to put together these stories, but also our audience is very much a busy audience. And they're also, surrounded by like not only the threat landscape, but also inundated with vendor, messaging all around. So what stands out to you? You said 27 years or so in doing storytelling in a corporate context. What stands out to you to be like the top three kind of ways in which to, you know, better present to an audience that's so distracted?
Such a good place to start, Dana. All right, so first thing, let's kind of define the word audience, right? Because we always think of audience as, yes, I'm going to get onto a stage and then they're all sitting in chairs and I'm standing up here and the spotlight's on me, or I'm looking into the camera and everybody else is tuning in on the virtual session. when we use the word audience, we want to remember an audience, yeah, it can be a room of 100 people, 50 or 100 people, or an arena of 10,000 people, or an audience can be one person sitting directly in front of you. And that audience can be external or it can be internal. So yeah, it can be your client, the one who you just mentioned, who is stressed out, overwhelmed, trying to figure out what to do next, how to justify any acquisition or purchase to their leadership. That audience can also be your boss. It can be somebody else on your team. When you need to communicate a concept to them and hope to bring them on board with what you want to share, what you think will make their lives better, they become the audience. And if you're in a conversation, we go back and forth with that. So right now, you are my audience. I'm speaking to you and to your listeners, and I'm the speaker and you're the audience. A moment ago, you were speaking, I was your audience. Even though I was an audience of one, you were asking me a question. That dynamic is important, that when we use the word audience, it's not just on a stage. So now let's talk about getting to that value. There are three core pillars that I build everything in my brand and that I build in for everything with the brands that I work with. And those three pillars, we'll go into them in a bit more detail, are value, passion, and connection. Those are the three starting points. Everything else stems down or flows down in the pyramid from that value, passion, connection, three-pillar starter point. So very quickly, value. Until an audience knows why they should pay attention to what you have to say, they won't. They don't care until they see the value in it for themselves. So my mantra, and the mantra that you've heard from me many times and that I try to share with everybody, is write it down if you're listening right now, because this is the mantra that you want to carry as well. Don't tell them what you want to tell them. Tell them what they want to hear. Speak for their benefit, not for your own. Meaning, don't speak about your brand, your role, your team, your product. You want to speak in their terms, in something that makes sense to them, so that they look at us and they say, you get me. You know exactly who I am. You understand me. You think like I do. We use the same language, the same lexicon. Once they start to hear that you understand them and you know what's valuable to them, that's when they begin to listen to your core message. So value is number one. Passion is number two. Until you care about what you have to offer, what you have to share, they won't care. Audiences are going to build their passion based on your passion. So you don't have to be over the top. I'm a pretty big natural energy dude. What you're hearing from me right now is very legitimate. I really am this energetic, Dane will tell you. But you have to really be involved and engaged with what you want to share with somebody else before they will get engaged as well. Your passion inspires their passion. Your impact on them is going to depend on whether or not they look at you and say, wow, that person really seems to care deeply about this. Maybe I should pay more attention because maybe it will benefit me as well. So passion is number two. The connection part is what I just talked about a moment ago, which is, what do we have in common? What do we share? Now, this is easy if you're in a one-on-one audience, right? Dane, you and I are talking to one another right now, or if your audience is your boss, or your audience is your team lead, or your audience is your employee in that moment, that one-on-one, it's easier to figure out what we share, what we have in common, how our stories align. When you're standing on a stage in front of 400 people, it's really hard to figure out what that alignment is with 400 individuals. That won't work. But what you can do is know your audience well enough to know where their pain points are and how you are here to address and knock out those pain points during your valuable time together. The connection happens when you're looking at them and saying the equivalent of, I cannot tell you how much I respect and value the time that you are giving to me. You're setting everything else aside to listen to me, to what I have to say to you. I want to respect that time as much as I can and create so much value and so much passion for you that you walk away from our engagement stronger than you walked into it. That's how you create a connection with an audience, is to create that alignment. So value, passion, connection, start at the tip of the pyramid, work your way down from there. That's your starting point.
That's awesome. And for the audience, VPC is kind of a technical term as well. If you need an association, right? So virtual private cloud.
Yeah, exactly. Especially in our
There we
cyber
go.
world.
It's a way to remember it for everybody out there. That's really good stuff. And so those are kind of like really the value, passion, connection. That makes total sense. And then if there were some things that presenters commonly trip over when presenting technical content to an audience, if say you're at a road show, or there's only, like you said, it could be one-on-one or 1 to 400. What are the common obstacles or challenges that presenters need to kind of get over when they're first starting out?
Ooh, I love that. We could do an entire episode just on that concept right there. The audience is always looking for three things from you when you are sharing your story, when you're telling your story to them. The first thing they're looking at is where is the differentiation? What am I hearing from this person that I'm speaking to that is something different from what I am used to up until this point? How are they creating change for me? All great connection, all great communication, all great engagement is about transformation. So you have to look at the person you're speaking with or the people you're speaking with and let them know here is what is about to change for you thanks to our time together. Let me create some differentiation for you so you can begin to think about our shared topic a bit differently than you've ever shared about it before. Second thing they're looking to you for is leadership in a way that says, I know what is in your way now, what is preventing you from getting to that next goal or from that target. And my time with you is going to be spent getting that obstacle out of your path. I'm just going to get rid of it so you don't have to worry about it anymore because you're not going to hear that from anybody else or everybody else who's trying to sell you something. They're not specifically removing the obstacle. They're just giving you another thing to spend money on. Let me get the obstacle out of your way. And if I can do that, then fine. Buy from me, buy from my competitor, stick with whoever you're currently working with, whoever your current contract is with. I don't care. I just want to serve you. I want to help you clear the obstacles from your path, get rid of the barriers so you can move forward and get where you want to go. And the third thing that they want to hear from you in that engagement is some sort of inspiration or motivation to take action, to do something once we are done with our engagement with one another. So the biggest mistakes that people make in their communications, and again, this is whether you're a product marketer, whether you are a sales engineer, whatever you are as a subject matter expert, the biggest mistakes that people make is they forget about that differentiation, clearing an obstacle, and motivation to action. So the first thing they do is they try to compare their product to the product that the customer is already using. You're using A now. I want to convince you to buy B instead. And they don't realize how hard that is. First of all, getting people to change their minds to buy something different from what they're buying today, virtually impossible. You're setting yourself up for failure. Number two, they may be under an existing contract. They can't buy what you have to offer because they've got another 2 years left with the current product line. Number three, think about their leadership. What are they up against budget-wise and financially? As you're asking them to invest in you, realistically, how are you going to convince them to take that to their leadership, to take that risk, to go and say, I think we should scrap what we have today in order to go with this other concept that I just heard about? If you're going to get them to do that, boy, you got a lot of work ahead of you. So if you don't lay out the clear differentiation, your audience is going to miss the intent, what you're trying to get across. Same thing with clearing an obstacle out of the path. I've got this great product. I think you ought to buy the product. Allow me to show you all the data, all the metrics, all the KPIs that show why my product is the best. And what they're saying is, yeah, I've already got a product that does a lot of what you're talking about, and it still hasn't cleared the obstacle out of my path. What are you going to do that's different? How are you going to knock that challenge out for me in a different way that makes it worth me putting my ass on the line with my leadership for you, for the contract with you? And the third thing that people miss in their engagements is they forget to tell their audience, their customer, their partner, whoever they're speaking with, now that you know this, here is exactly how you get started. Here is what I'm going to do for you to get you moving on that path to success. And I'm going to take all the pressure and the effort off of you. Allow me to do it for you in partnership with you. And they forget to do that. They just assume, well, if I tell you all about my product, you'll see how great it is and you'll know exactly what to go and do. No, people are too busy. You said it yourself in that introduction there, Dane. People, they're overwhelmed. They're stressed out. They don't know what to do. So don't assume that they do. Walk them through it. Motivate them to take action and get them started down the path. Because if you can get them to take that first step toward a better reality, thanks to you, they will take all of the steps that follow. But you got to get them moving. You got to motivate them
Yeah,
to action.
that's a great, and it goes back to that initial point of, creating, value. Like you said, it starts with the V.
Yes.
And, I used to have a post-it note on my monitor that said, INAY. It's not about you. Just to remind
Mhm.
myself to really take that perspective, and in so many ways that's true with presenting it to what you're saying. And speaking of V, and I typed a note in my Zoom chat here, and I sent it accidentally to you. Apologies for the distraction there. But I was just thinking, like, oh, well, what about the differences between virtual presentations and physical in person? Because I've had my share of both, and it's definite. I don't care what anybody says, it's definitely more frightening, or makes you, really want to prepare more when you're going to Vegas for a user conference or something like that, and you have to stand in front of, a couple hundred customers or prospects and share a message, or a theater talk at RSAC or Black Hat, because you're there and you're literally 3, 5, 10, 20 feet away from everyone, and you can see all the reactions. You can see when someone's zoning out, or you're
Right.
just not resonating, right? It's just more intimidating. So I don't know, if is there any way to distinguish. And I remember actually one of the tips you gave to me previously was even the way you set up, and I tried to apply that even here with our interview process, is like the distance between the top of the video and the top of your head, and
Mm.
the dynamics, the mic, and like having those elements like as a professional in order. And I'm probably even forgetting some today, but those things kind of stuck with me as well. So like tactically, what are some of the things that you recommend for let's start with virtual, for virtual presenters, because a lot of what we do is webinars and these things. So what do you think? Like even from the way you set up your environment to the background to the, things like that.
Great, great, great. Love that. Yeah. And I love that we're tying virtual together with value. We're putting them on the same page. So bravo to you for that. All right. So let's talk virtual a little bit. Virtual is hard. Not going to lie, not going to candy coat it, sugarcoat it. There are a lot of potential negatives with virtual that are easier to overcome than you would imagine. There are also some positives, really big positives that I want to get at in virtual. So let's start with some of the negatives. The problem is you're trying to have a relationship with a little circle of glass. In this case, my circle of glass is right up here. Okay. Dane, you are down here. Most people will talk to the Brady Bunch squares that are going on in front of them. Or if those Brady Bunch squares are turned off, they'll just look at their bullet list of information, or they'll look at their slide deck. They're looking everywhere but where the audience is. And the audience is here.
Hmm.
That's hard because, as you say, in this case, you're one-on-one. I can just move you up and I can see you smile or I can see you nod. But if I'm speaking to 130 people through that little pane of glass, I just have to assume that they're hearing what I have to say and that they're engaging with me. I don't get the feedback. So as the presenter, as the speaker, or as the person making the pitch, it is now my responsibility to carry not only my energy, but your energy as well, because we don't have that real-time feedback there in the room. That's hard. So number one way to overcome that, stay in that circle. The people who are listening to you speak, they're every bit as alive, breathing, pulse, smiling, nodding, engaging as if they were sitting right in front of you. You just have to trust that they're on the other side of the camera feed. As they're behaving in the exact same way in the room. We have loads of statistics, countless statistics that show that if I ask a question of you in a virtual way and I say, okay, how many of you have experienced this sort of cybersecurity threat to your infrastructure as your external landscape has continued to expand and expand, and you get more and more breaches and input? It's harder to fill those gaps or to know where the problem is coming from. Sound familiar to any of you? And we know that people are at home going, uh-huh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you bet. The same way they would be doing in the room. That makes absolutely no difference. You just have to trust, as the person carrying the story, that they are out there listening to you every bit as intently and as engaged with you as they would be if you were in the same space. Have the relationship with that camera, but just know there are loads of humans on the other side of the camera. Keep your energy high, keep the content in here, minimize the number of slides or side notes that you have, and don't worry about looking at all of their beautiful little faces around your computer screen. They all live here. Now, that's hard to do. The positive part is, now let's think of yourself in a room. I'm standing on stage and we're at a conf or we're at a Cisco Live or wherever we happen to be. And I've got a room and I got 240 people. And some of them are in the front row. Some of them are way off in the back row. Some of them are to my right. Some of them are to my left. And I've got monitors on either side. And I've built slides with very little itty bitty text where anybody beyond the fourth row can't read that text because they don't have X-ray vision and they just can't see all the detail. I have to play that entire room. I have to make sure that everybody knows that I'm connected with them. And I've got those monitors, and my instinct is to go to those monitors and turn away from my audience so I can reference what's on them. Or I'm in the room and I've got my confidence monitor down below. My audience is sitting here, but I'm so busy looking and reading at everything going on down here that I'm creating no connection with the audience. The beauty of virtual, I can talk to 10,000 people at a time right there. I can look right into that lens and I can have eye contact with 100% of the people watching me 100% of the time. I know that I'm telling my story directly to them by being in that camera with them. So you can start to look at virtual presentation as a net positive. You're also in a controlled environment. As long as you got a decent camera, decent setup, decent microphone, decent light around you, you don't have to worry about any of it crashing. Somebody tripping over a cable in the back and unplugging your slide deck, something going dark, your clicker not advancing, a loud noise in the back of the room. You get to control everything in the virtual storytelling. And that's so empowering. So start to think of virtual as a positive methodology of reaching out through that camera to your audience instead of a negative of, man, I'm so much better when I'm in the room and I can actually see people respond to me. No, change your thought process. You'll become a much better virtual presenter.
Like that. And keeping on the tactical front, you mentioned this a little bit, the size of the font, the duration of presentations, the how long you stay on a certain concept or slide. If you have a demo, should you, like, at what point in the story should you play that demo? And then I also, after this, I have a question on using like hand raisers for audience engagement. We can do that one after, but I would like to
Perfect.
start and just figure out what you recommend for actual like content on the screen, because it is interesting how you think that you spend all this time on slides but if you put a slide with all this text on it, what I think it was from you or somewhere else I learned, the audience will just sit there and start reading it, and they'll get distracted and they'll try to jump ahead, and you'll be up here on a point, but they're already advancing because they want to ingest that as quickly as possible. So what are your tips around like the content you put on slides to support
A
your story?
100%. I love that. Yeah, because you and I have talked about that before with one another in your own presentation work. We do ourselves a disservice with slides. So I'm going to be very dramatic here at the beginning, and then I'm going to backtrack from being dramatic. The best presentation in the world should never require a single slide. The best presentation in storytelling happens between one human being and another human being. We talk to each other, we share our stories with one another, we share our connection points, we share our value, and we don't need anything visual to support us. If we know what we're talking about, care what we're talking about, and get to the value, you got 100% of the story right there. But it's not the industry standard. The industry standard is to support your content with visuals. So now it's incumbent on the speaker, it's incumbent on you to think, all right, where should I be the primary voice? And when should my slide become the primary voice? Because what I don't want to do is compete with my slide deck. And because humans are visual creatures, the moment we change slides, the second we hit click, that slide is the new guest at the party. So you're talking together, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, who's that? Who just entered the room? Are they more interesting than who I'm listening to or talking to with right now? And we set up our own competition with a slide. Every time we change, we know that our audience is going to leave what we are saying and go to that visual. So now, how we build that visual determines whether that visual supports us or competes with us. And the more you have on that slide, the more competition you create for your own message. Because as you just said properly, Dane, whatever I say for the next 30 seconds, if it's a busy slide, my audience is going to spend that 30 seconds reading that slide, and they can't do both. They can't listen to me and read the slide. Multitasking is a myth. It's not a thing. It's task switching is what human beings are good at. We can go back and forth between different tasks, but we can't multitask. We cannot listen and read at the same time with any authority. We're like a multi-purpose office machine, right? If an office machine just prints, it's really good at printing. But when an office machine prints and scans and faxes, Now it has to do too many things. And if one thing breaks, the whole thing breaks. So think of your slide as always being in service of you as opposed to you being in service of your slide. Because if all the story is in your slide deck, the reality is your audience doesn't need you. Just send them that slide deck by email. Send them a PDF breakdown, send them a white paper, a mission statement. Let them read it by email, or you can send it directly to them by text or share it on social media or whatever you want to do. But if you are going to say to them, I would like you to set your life aside for the next 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, and listen to me. Make me your priority. There better be a good reason, and it better be because the story is coming from me. It's a storytelling from me to you. If it's in my slides, they don't need me. Just send them the slide deck. Save everybody a whole bunch of time, hassle, and stress. So yeah, keep your slides minimal. Frequently, a picture is in fact worth 1,000 words. You can try to explain a chart, or you can put up a crystal clear chart on your slide deck and say, rather than me trying to explain it to you, check that out. That tells the story. Now you are deliberately ceding your authority to your visual. And then once they get it, you take that authority back. And now you become the story again. There are times when that works beautifully in a slide deck. A photo, the right photo really can speak volumes. Instead of you trying to explain something to somebody, let me just show it to you. Let me show you how it works. Testimonials, I can read you a full testimonial, or I can pop it up on the screen and let you read it for yourself and sit back and take a moment. Rather than me speaking, check that out. Read that. I'm going to give you 10 seconds. Really look at what you're seeing there. It's pretty great, right? Wouldn't you like that for yourself? Cool. Now that you've seen it, click. Eyes back on me. Story back on me. You want to create that balance back and forth, and virtual even more than in person. Because in person, they've got a physical in front of them. They've got a body there on that stage. But when you're virtual, when you are going through a camera, the minute that slide pops up, you vanish. And whatever you say vanishes with you. Make sure that the story comes from you and not from your slide deck. So I think I may have gotten off a little bit there with what you initially asked me, but hopefully there was value in there that made it worthwhile.
No, I think it's so relevant because we spend a lot. We could get really down that rabbit hole of spending way too much time on perfecting a slide without thinking about the overarching story and the what has authority while you're presenting is a great tip because, like you said, if you throw that slide up there, all of a sudden you cede authority to it. It's a new person entering the room where all of a sudden you are distracting your audience into some other direction, and you could sidetrack the whole entire presentation that way. So it's a
So true.
great tip. And then
You know what? I'll interrupt you for one moment because I want
yeah,
to add one more thing in while we're on that.
sure.
Quantity of content in a slide, our instinct as speakers is we have to give everything to our audience. We have to load those slides with every detail, every subtext, every point so that they don't miss out on anything. This actually undermines audience focus. An audience can only take in and retain 3 big ideas at a time. So if you have more than 3 things happening in your slide, more than 3 bullets, more than 3 short word phrases, more than 3 images, your audience gets lost in the complexity. You actually end up undermining your own story because when everything is special, nothing is special. So you always want to pare your slides down to the core information. And here's the trick. Always leave as much information as you can out of your slide deck. Because what you're doing, you are deliberately not giving them the full story so that you can say, in my presentation, I don't have time to give you everything. What I want to do is get you excited about what's possible. And then because there is so much more that I can share with you, so many more bullets, details, pieces of information, let's set up our next call with one another and I'll share them with you then. You are establishing the fact that instead of giving you everything in a slide deck because you're worried you might leave something out, you are deliberately leaving something out in order to set up the next point of connection with that client. So much more powerful as a strategy.
Absolutely. And often with the product demo piece, if we looked at a demo as kind of an authority that takes over, would you give exceptions to that in terms of a technical audience where you're trying to portray what a product's value is?
Love that, Dane. Great question. Answer is actually no. I would not include it in the demo. Instead, what I would do is think about who my audience is. Who am I showing this demo to? And you asked earlier, when should the demo be in there? My view always as early in your presentation as you can. We learn when we're kids, don't tell me, show me, right? If you have something in your demo that shows exactly where the differentiation is, where exactly we clear that obstacle out of their path, and exactly what should get them excited to take action, why wait? Why explain it? Why talk about it? Let me show it to you, because once you see it, man, you are going to get lit up. You're going to see exactly that, oh, that's what I've been waiting for. I got to go get that. So get to the demo as quickly as you reasonably can. And then in terms of what you include in the demo, you want to think about those three things as well. What am I showing you in the demo that is different from what you have done up until this moment? What am I showing you in that demo that changes the paradigm for you, that empowers you in some new way, gets you excited? Then, what am I going to show you in my demo that takes that challenge that you walked in the door with and gets rid of it, makes it vanish? And then what am I going to show you in that demo that makes you say, I can't wait another 6 months or another year to do this. The minute I'm out of this conference, the minute I leave this session, I'm skipping the next session. I need to get on the phone with my bosses and say, I just found it. That thing we've been looking to figure out, we got to get moving on this now. We got to get moving on it today. That's what should be in your demo. All of the other details, the things that drag a demo out, where you're showing somebody 5, then 10, then 15, then 20, then 25 things, lines of code. Nothing I hate worse than lines of code. This isn't a workshop. They don't have their hands on the computer. They're never going to remember the lines of code that you're showing to them. That's for later. That's when you do a site visit. That's once they're on board and excited with their leadership. You say, now let me walk you through it and let you do it for yourself. Or better yet, let me come to your HQ. Let me sit down with your team. Let me show them exactly how this thing works. Because once they see it, they're going to demand that you go and buy it. You want to keep the demo quick, sharp, make it about value, passion, connection. What's different? What changes for you in this demo? Where does this demo take that obstacle you've been up against for the past 3 years that you've been terrified about and get rid of it? And then what's going to make you say, I got to get it now? That's what belongs in your demo. Anything more is a waste of your time and theirs.
I remember one of the things you recommended at the end of every presentation is, and I can't remember the golden rule there, but it was something around never leave them without something to do. And I'm butchering the phrase, but there was some catchy line you had.
All right, so here's the phrase. You never say goodbye until you've set up the next hello.
There it is. Never
Yep.
say goodbye till you set up the next hello. That's such a powerful way to remember every closing. Um, goodbye, hello methodology. We'll have to patent that for you at some point.
It's not mine. Trust me. I think I've
Okay.
stolen it from probably 50 people who are far smarter than I
Well,
will
that's
ever even hope
actually
to be.
that's a good point, and that's the last one of the things I wanted to ask you too is just like some of the things you're talking about, and these are really it's storytelling is like it's an age old, it's one of the oldest forms of communication, right? People sitting around a campfire. It's always been around. And if if you think about there was this book by some you might be familiar with Joseph Campbell and the Hero
Oh,
with a Thousand
hero's
Faces,
journey.
the hero's journey, right? So
Absolutely.
okay, so those principles, are those something that you have learned from where and if you haven't heard of it, you can Google it, maybe recommend if you're into storytelling, buying the book or but Joseph Campbell is this author who put together that almost every story follows a similar flow of or every story with a hero in it. And if you look at like Star Wars or Indiana Jones or some of the great stories that we've of our time, Lord of the Rings, whatever it is, there's always this progression between a call to adventure as the starting point, and then there's like this kind of progression that the hero goes through. Do you kind of subscribe to using something similar to that for your methodology with corporate storytelling, or do you have your own way to look at it? Is there like some kind of, I don't know, framework that you have? I don't know, that you use from a mental place that you can go to tell a better story?
Absolutely. I've got a bunch of them. And again, a lot of my training programs go into that. But let's talk Campbell. I am so glad that you brought Campbell up, Dane. Campbell is brilliant. And without going into hyper detail, and I do recommend that everybody go take a look at the hero's journey. It really, if you look at the Odysseus myth is kind of at the core of everything Campbell was talking about. And you just mentioned it a moment ago. You get the status quo, which is where the hero begins, is in the normal world, their current world, which is where your audience is when you begin your engagement with them, where they are today. Then you've got this threshold statement, this concept that says, I'm going to invite you to step over the threshold on the way to something new. And it's terrifying, and they don't want to do it, and they're resistant to it. And sometimes, yeah, you get the Luke Skywalker, where now you've got the call to action at the beginning, the call to adventure, and the hero always resists that adventure. They push back against it. That's your customer. That is your client. They're going to push back against 100% of what you have to say, because they don't want to change. Change is uncomfortable. It's hard. It's painful. It's risky. And you're asking them to change when you ask them to buy your product or to consider your solution compared to the solution that they are working with today. So they're going to resist. And then eventually, if you can tell the story correctly, you get the hero to step over that threshold and go down what I call the road to new success. And the road to new success has three elements to it. And if you go back to your high school Latin or science or whatever, you may remember that you've got logos and pathos. Logos basically just means information. It's the logistical. It's everything that is data-driven, statistical. Here are the things I'm going to tell you about my solution, about my product. Here is all of the statistics. Here is all the data breakdown. Here are the numbers that I want to share with you. It's all the information. That's the logo side. The pathos side is the storytelling. And here's why you give a damn. Here's why you care. Here's how it's going to make your life better. Here are proof points that I can share with you that show that if you will take this risk and follow me down that journey, follow me down that road, it's going to pay off for you and for your team and your organization in phenomenal ways. And you weave back and forth between the logos and the pathos. Here's a little information, and here's why you should care as a human being. And now here's another personal story, and here's the data that backs it up. And you offer both. And everything up at the top is covered by your ethos, your moral code, your vision of how things ought to be in the world, and why people want to go down that road to get to the end result that you're there to offer them, based on your moral view of why you feel this is the right thing to do. So logos, pathos, and ethos, right? If you tell your story correctly, they will step over off of the road into their new reality. And that's the end of the hero's journey, right? So Campbell is a great way to think about how you storytell with your customer, with your partner, when you speak to an analyst and you try to explain why what you're doing is very special and very different. But all of that, let's shove it to the back and let's go to one simple core concept that everybody listening to us right now can retain. Most speakers, presenters, sales representatives, product marketers, the biggest mistake they make is in thinking that they are the hero. You are not the hero. Your customer is the hero. You are the guide. You are not Luke Skywalker. You are Ben Kenobi, right? In the Matrix, you are not Neo. You, as the PMM, you are Morpheus. You are the one who is helping guide the hero to get where they want to go. And that is the point of your story. And that's the point where Campbell and corporate storytelling cross over beautifully with one another. Most organizations want to position themselves as the hero of the story. Let me tell you about the background of my company, all the amazing things we do. Let me tell you about the awards we've won, what our market share is. Here's what people have to say about us. Here is our amazing product. And let me tell you everything our product does. And they make themselves the hero of the story. And the customer is just sitting back saying, you're not talking about me. You're talking about yourself. I don't care. Tell me my story. If you make me the hero, you can sell me anything you want. Again, it goes back to the idea that a good story makes the person you're speaking with say, you get me. You understand me. You're here for my benefit, not for your own. You're putting me above you. I want to hear everything you have to say. Bring it on. Tell me what your story is. And let me feel connected to that story. Let me get inspired by it. Let me hear the value in it. Let me hear the passion in it. And let me hear the connection in it. And if you can do that, I'm all yours and we get a great relationship going. I am so glad you brought up Campbell.
And one of my favorite analogies too, because you brought up a few there, I would go with Gandalf and Gandalf. You're Gandalf, not Frodo or Sam.
Exactly right.
So
Frodo's the hero. You
yeah,
are the Gandalf. Get Frodo to get that ring back to Mordor.
absolutely. And that's such good advice because at least for me and for other PMMs listening would probably relate to this. We are so quick to jump into speeds and feeds and understanding like why we're great and making those types of statements at the outset without ever taking, doing the kind of due diligence in the messaging process of understanding the true customer situation, market context, challenges that they're going through, to really build that sense of empathy with the audience. And so I think that's kind of what,
Mhm.
everything you outlined here in terms of value, and understanding the customer's viewpoint first is a key to success. So
Dan, let me ask you something. Go
yeah,
back to that speeds and feeds. Okay.
sure.
So, based on what we've been talking about here, your audience, when you first begin to speak with them, in this initial point of contact, they're not ready for speeds and feeds yet. That's the next point. First, you got to hook them, you got to get them in. So, what do you think would be a great way? What do the speeds and feeds really mean to the individual, to the human being you're speaking to? Fundamentally, if they can get to the better feed, if they can get to the better speed, what does it mean to them?
It has to go back to understanding how do you, like you said before, clear that obstacle for the customer. How are you going to help me? Like if we look at it in the hero context, if they're going to be the hero of the security operations center or whatever, how are they going to do that? And you have to truly understand, well, what does that mean from their viewpoint, where the technology that they use, how is it going to help them to address a new emerging challenge that's out there in the wild, for example. And so to me, I think to answer your question, I would say it's about how you're actually equipping and enabling and arming them to clear out an obstacle to success.
And what happens if they are able? What if you can be the one that helps them clear that obstacle to secure their perimeter, to fill in that visibility gap within the organization? What is it going to do for that individual that you're speaking to?
It's going to make them the hero.
Damn right. Right. And this is fundamentally what people want. We mix up want and need. So, for anybody who's ever read Donald Miller, Donald Miller is
Yes.
brilliant. His company is, yeah, building a story brand.
Yes, great content that he's put together there.
So good.
Yeah, and I remember reading that, and a lot of the hero topic he builds on in his framework. So it's very interesting.
Absolutely. Seth Godin does it as well. He's really good in All Marketers Tell Stories, some great resources that you can read. But fundamentally, we tend to mix up wants and needs. We think in terms of people's needs. You have an organization that is under an expanding security threat, and I am here to sell you a product that makes your organization more secure, that makes you less prone to threats, that helps you to control your resources more and their independent BYOD situation, meaning in terms of who has access to what and when and where. That's what you need. That's not what your audience is looking for. That's later. Your audience has wants. Wants are more important. You know what their wants are? They're not about security. They're not about the stuff that we're selling. My want is I want to make sure that my job is stable. I want to make sure that my leadership looks at me as an invaluable member of the organization, that they give me the resources that I need, that they lift me up instead of always looking at me as a potential budget savings if they can hack my job. I want to get home to my family a little earlier on the weekend and actually have that weekend off so I don't have to be constantly watching my phone to see where the next security alert pops up because I'm going to be at my kid's Little League game. These are my wants. And if you, as the guide within your organization, within your product, can go in and you can satisfy those wants and let them know, I understand what you really want. Getting to better security, that's just a way to get to your wants. Those are your needs. I'll fill your needs. I can do that. I've got the product that fills the needs. But more than that, I need to get to know you and what you really want. And if you can figure out the difference between wants and needs and balance them whenever you give a presentation, whether that presentation is 5 minutes long or an hour long, if you can put those two together, your audience is all yours. They will listen and they will care, but you're not speaking to wallets. You're speaking to humans, and every human has their wants and the corporation has its needs. You need to find a balance between the two.
Amazing stuff. And just to recap on some of the resources dropped so far in this awesome conversation with Steve, and feel free to add on to this, Steve, and we're going to get into another amazing one, which I see to the left of you there, or to your right, I should say. Um, Hero with a Thousand, I think it's the title is Hero with a Thousand Faces.
Hmm?
Joseph Campbell, must read, or just, search and get the gist of it. And then you have Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller, which is
Yep.
another key asset. And of course, nothing gets sold till the story gets told, right? So you want to throw that up in front of the camera here?
I
Because
will. Before I talk about this, though, I'm going to add another two of them. A guy named Seth Godin, one of the most popular speakers on the planet. All Marketers Tell Stories. And what I love about it is the original title of the book when he first released it was All Marketers Tell Lies. And even though it was very negative, it was about how we explain things to people, and people will tell themselves their own lies in order to justify what it is that we're saying. It's a great way to look at it. He changed it to All Marketers Tell Stories. So check out Seth Godin. Another guy who's probably my number one guru, a man named Terry O'Reilly. If you're a podcast person, you might know his podcast called Under the Influence. He's a national, a global leader in market messaging. Used to run pirate marketing out of Canada, and he's got a show on the CBC. But his book, This I Know, is another great one for figuring out how to get to your core story. So I'd add in Terry as well. He's really quite brilliant. And then another guy who you should look up. I'll mention two things. A guy named Yuri Hasson, URI, first name Hasson. But look up Yuri Hasson on TED Talks and listen to his talk called This Is Your Brain on Communication. It's a great way of breaking down how your audience hears you and responds to what you have to say in terms of your stories and how you create connection between you. So that's another asset that I would add in as well. And then because you brought it up, this little personal gem right here. So yeah, nothing gets sold until the story gets told. This came out last year. This is a 2023 release for me, and you can find it in hardcover, softcover, audiobook read by me. My apologies in advance for that. Ebook, whatever it is. But I do
on
love
Audible. On
what this
Audible.
is. You can grab it on Audible, yeah, and it's going to be me speaking to you the entire way through. I waited a long time to release the book because my initial concept was to go against my mantra, to tell you my stories. Here's what I've experienced. Here's what I've learned. And I realized nobody cares what I've learned and what I've experienced. You care about the value to you. So I wrote the book to make sure that on every page is not only a concept of how to be a better storyteller and communicator within a corporate space, but also lets you know exactly how to do it. It shows you how to make those changes from what you're doing today to what you should be doing tomorrow in order to really increase your storytelling methodology and prowess.
Excellent. And then I'm sure you have a website people can learn more about you.
You can go to either stevemulter.com or corporatestorytelling.com. Both are going to get you there. And I also have a little giveaway for anybody who is listening in right now. If you go to corporatestorytelling.com/guide, I've created an e-guide. It's called 5 Paths to Passionate Storytelling. And you can go download that. You want to put in the code sold told 23, all one word, sold told 23. Put in that code. You can download that 5 Paths to Passionate Storytelling e-guide, but it's a great way for anybody, wherever you are in your speaking, in your marketing, whatever position you happen to hold within your organization. It's a great 5 things that you can do right away today to begin increasing the impact of your corporate storytelling as you go out and speak to any audience of any size, and it'll get you moving in the right direction.
There you go. Awesome. Yeah, no, that's a great little resource to have. And then, Steve, I mean, all these tips and things, if PMMs only applied all this, I think it would benefit the entire industry because it would get buyers to what they need faster. It would make us more effective for our employers. So I really appreciate you carving out the time and doing this, and helping out the Cyber PMM community. And yeah, really appreciate it. Thanks for joining today.
So kind of you. It's been a pleasure. It's been a lot of fun. I know we could do this for hours and hours and hours, but thanks to you for inviting me onto the platform. Congratulations again, and thanks to everybody for listening.
All right. Thank you.